Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fall series of the SCI Nano Chats. My name is Faniel Wendy, and I'm so excited to host today Cautney Nelson from Millennial Scnce. So just to give a quick recap, SCI Nano Chats are a opportunity for us to engage with founders and other program directors of various STEM initiatives around the country and the world, in fact. And our whole point is to just get to know what they do, what the logic models behind their organizations are, so that we can then see how we can collaborate perhaps, also try to also help them think more strategically about what they're doing and what they could do differently or change and also. So it's an active discussion, 10, 15 minutes of presentation from the presenter, and then we dive into the discussion. And it's driven by the discussion, so it's really interactive, and we can stop the presentation at any given time to get people to talk more on a given point. So with that, I will pass it on to Cautney Nelson. Cautney, welcome so much, and look forward to engaging with you in the next several 10 or 20 minutes. Okay, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction. Also thank you for inviting Millennial Scnce. This is actually a really great program. So what it is basically, it's an initiative to get students and high school and child age, to be able to have resources and the aid for free programs and initiatives in school or out of school that it really helps them to get into STEM fields and have that exposure. I'm gonna go into the first slide. So, the inception for this program was really one time last year. It's because the organization is fairly new. So early last year during the holidays, I did some volunteer work. I went to the Bethany House in New York. It's a house shelter for women and girls. And as a child growing up, I didn't have much, I'm my single mother or whatever. So what it was for during the holidays, we had gifts, but anything else in addition to it, we didn't. So like gingerbread houses and like picking out Christmas trees and a lot of the activities that come with the holidays and all the excitement that it brings, we didn't have that. So, as I go older, I love to doing things like that with kids, so are less fortunate, be able to have that experience. So I went to the Bethany House and I did this program. I think we built like gingerbread houses, and I did the holiday decor, and I put on the holiday music, and it was just an amazing experience. And the children were just in awe, because what it helped me to understand is having exposure to something really helps connect people, and it helps develop the mind and the brain, and it brings people together. So I wrote here, holidays highlight the things that we take for granted the most. And STEM now has become a lot more progressive in education and for people to get involved in it. So I thought to myself, what would be a way to be able to help people that come from like lower income communities be able to get this exposure in different professions, different careers, ideally STEM based. So that's where the concept for Millennial Scnce came about. Who are we? So the organization is focused on highlighting the discrepancies low-income students face in STEM and improving on these factors through the free programs and resources. There is a disadvantage for some students to afford summer programs or technology courses, nonetheless being granted exposure to these different professions in STEM. So even me growing up in the public school system, I was so like in awe with genetics, and we did like a little like mini series on it. Not even a mini series, we kind of just like jumped into it and jumped right back out. So just being able to go into detailed professions, and I'll explain a little later in the next slides, astrology and genetics, like I mentioned, viruses, all these different topics and coding, all these great things. Just having that extra can really change the trajectory of a student, of a child's life. So going on to the next slide, why change? Why the need for this program? There's a lot of programs out here, that are working towards, change in STEM. Why Millennial Science? Well, exposure to the fields, these fields in STEMs, they promote diversity, and it bridges the gap in academia for increased research and knowledge. Increase in diversity leads to more effective research, greater sample size from ethnic backgrounds. I cannot list how many conferences that I've been to where a lot of the focal points are not having enough samples from, diverse population. Most of the descendants that they got are from European, background, and not enough African Americans. And, doing things like this, initiatives like this, will span out not just within the next 2-3 years. We're talking about centuries, generations into the future, that it's going to make that drastic change. And it starts from now. It starts from, the millennials now, so hence Millennial Science. And also getting children and teenagers attached to a tangible future that will help the working economy and keep these students engaged and focused on that future goal. Next, so the solution, the programs that we do. So what you're looking at right now are 4 of the programs that we did this past summer. So we have Stopping Viruses, help us find what causes the spread of viruses through art with paint, Unraveling DNA. This we made DNA models, recreated DNA models, learning X-rays. So this is radiology, comments, creating a comment, help us build through the solar system. All these great, fields and professions. And when doing these programs, we highlight in detail the different careers within the subject. So it's really, really great. Programs that are free, and resources / assistance that guide students into their aspired path. So that's the focal point for Millennial Science. So listed here are the libraries that we've partnered with over the summer and into the new school year. I didn't list them here, but we're also in talks with a couple school districts that are in Long Island that we'll have the students. We'll be working directly with the schools so that the students will go to these local libraries that are close by the schools, and we'll be able to keep track of who's going, how many are in attendance, what are they getting from it, and overall helping them get into these fields past the program. So I'm going to talk about that a little more right now. So development stages. Currently, we're at the first phase of development. So we got the content out. We reached out to all these libraries. We marketed specific dates, and we executed them. So we've done over 10 events this past summer, and it's been really great. So now the next phase is doing newer content to reach teens now, because we worked with children this past summer, so to reach teens. And we're working with the schools directly. We're going to market those dates. We're going to execute the events and retain the relationship with students. What's going to be different is that in the phase 3, we're developing certification programs that the students will complete. So it'll be like a 4-week or a 5-week program, and students will be able to receive a certificate for taking these programs. And it's going to just show all that they've learned and just put them at a leverage compared to, other students, just being able to have that certificate to show that the work that you put in, and all the details of whatever we went over, coding, all the different professions we've covered in those weeks, internship skills, all those things. So it's going to greatly enhance the students' resumes. And then we're going to connect these students with paid internships and or summer research programs. So that'll give them the leverage that they need to not only get into the trajectory that they want to, whatever STEM field they so please, but having the leverage and the knowledge to be able to be successful at it, just having an extra step so they won't be, disadvantaged by not. So short-term goals, we're going to continue to facilitate high-quality programs filled with content that will engage and develop low-income students' careers by giving them a head start. Working with 5 branches in New York City and Long Island, which we currently are doing that right now. Assisting upwards 20 to 30 senior high school students at each branch. And we emphasize senior because we want to focus on those that are going right into college, so that they'll be able to, choose what major, and having had the exposure, they'll know for sure this is something they want to do or don't want to do. So, right. So also sponsoring a panel and scholarship dinner for participants. So that towards the end of the year of 2020, we want to do like a panel from alum from the schools that we're going to be working with, and also making it a joint event by having a scholarship dinner for the participants that, excelled during the program. So the logic model, problems that students not receiving required assistance and resources to develop the skills needed to be successful STEM fields. The mission, bridge the gap for students by facilitating certification programs that will give students in impoverished communities leverage in acquiring internships/apprenticeships in STEM professions. The vision is putting an end to disadvantage in STEM. So project committees. So currently we have planning on working with focus groups to plan out what directional program will benefit students the most. As far as finance, having members of the organization, donations, corporate sponsorship. We currently have one corporate sponsorship that has been help, financing most of the programs for this year and the rest of the year. So we're focusing more on next year, 2020, scholarship dinner, and so forth and so forth. And then the design, the website, social media outlets that are basically aiding in our growth of the program. And for the 2020 timeline, the certification program, is going to start in January, and it's going to be the first cohort for students. So we're going to do 2 cohorts from like January to March, February, early March, and then like from March to May, early May. And then late May, we're going to start the internship matching process. And then towards the end of the year will be the alumni scholarship dinner and the STEM leaders panel. So that was it for the presentation. Here are our Facebook channels, Twitter, Instagram, all spelled the same, Millennial Scnce. And then here's our phone number and our email address to get in contact with us. And thank you for your time.
Okay, great. Cautney, thank you so much for that quick overview of the organization. I think that was the easy part, okay? Now gets the hard part where basically the floor is open, people can ask questions. We get to dig a little bit deeper in terms of what you've said, and that way we can get better clarification in terms of what's going on. You probably want to leave your slides up.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the first one.
And in that way we can jump in and so forth. I would ask people who are on the call, if you want to ask a question, just jump in. I think there's a part where you can raise a hand. I think I can see who's raised a hand, that's fine. But with there's so few of us here, that's fine for us to just have an open conversation. Just make sure the background is not too noisy so that when you jump in, it's not like we're hearing everything in the background that's going on over there. Okay, so I'm gonna kick us off a little bit and just go and I just want to learn more about you actually. Can you tell us about like, what's your background? What, tell us more about you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I started off as straight after high school. I know I wanted to, go into genetics. And but I was in a nursing program for about 2 years. And then at College of New Rochelle, then I transferred to Adelphi University. to continue the nursing degree. And then I transferred to Stony Brook University in biochemistry, which is what I ultimately wanted to do. And then I finished that degree, and I am currently getting my MBA for genetic. So that's a little bit about me.
So,
The organization we started well, it's always been in New York. Subset of close to New York City, just a little farther out. Long Island is where we started in Long Island, and then we branched out to New York City. So we're doing a event in the Bronx actually next week. So that should be fun. And then back to
so you said you're doing a PhD right now or MBA?
MBA.
MBA, okay. And when you say we, who is we?
Okay. Oh, my team. Yo, I didn't mention my team. So,
Right.
yeah, so it's a team. Well, most of us did the team. We started at because I did an apprenticeship at NYU. So her name is Catherine Justice, and she works with me directly. She has her PhD in biochemistry, and we've been working on this since December of last year. And she also has like the same background, grew up in Queens, New York. That's where I'm from, in Queens, New York. So both went to public school. So some of the experiences that, we both have, so it helped us, resonate and build this, organization.
See. So
And
two of you then,
go
two of
forward.
you, or
Yeah.
oh, okay. That's impressive. If it's only two of you and you've managed to, you said you did 10 events over the summer, right?
Yeah.
Which is quite impressive. And so, which I think, you guys you're going to school, and I'm assuming she's also doing her thing, and you're doing this on the side, right? Is that my understanding?
Correct. Yeah. And
Okay.
we currently have a social media manager that we're adding to the festivities, because with 2020 coming up so quickly, a lot of different events we're having. So it's going to take a little more than part-time, but as the team grows and thus forth, so it should pan out.
Okay. Now, could you go to your logic model slide, if you can quickly find that? I was particularly intrigued, just thinking more about what it is that you are doing, right? So you said you're hosting these events, the stopping viruses, creating a comment, and so forth. In the midst of all this, I'm just curious on where does the certification program, because I was really intrigued by that, where does that fit in? Is the idea then that you are trying to train, I'm assuming you said seniors, right, in high school?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you're providing them certification to do what?
So right, so this certification is really important, because I know firsthand, going into colleges and going to um, eh, just jobs that are in the field of STEM. It's always good to have, especially some now. I'm speaking in reference to now lower income, disadvantaged neighborhoods that don't have the experience, the exposure to these internships, to be able to go in, firsthand, just jumping in. It's really hard, and a lot of students struggle, so when we were doing first when we were because at completely the first beginnings phases, it was free programs to children in STEM. That was it. But then as we did more programs and we spoke to more students and children, the sight is there, the mindset is there to go into these fields. But then would they get into these offices, and it's time to get positions in these fields, and they don't have enough experience, or they don't know exactly what is needed of them. Can you do this? Can you dish out this? And it's expected when you get hired into these STEM professions. And of course, college experience is going to give you that, but it's always good to have that leverage, to have that high up to say, I went to this program at Millennial Scnce, is certified by this and that school, and it helps students to be able to learn all these A, B, C, D, and E. And that's what we want students to have.
Okay, so tell me about the A, B, C, D, and E. Like, what is that?
Okay, so it's basically gonna cover, because I kind of want to go into like a one size fits all. So it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna cover a lot of different fields. I'm working with Stony Brook professors to be able to curate the content, but it's going to go into almost all the disciplines. So we have coding, engineering, astrology, meteorology. There's a couple more
I
things.
see. And how long is this then? I'm just curious if it's so expansive. Sounds really expansive. So is it a week, 2 weeks, a
Yeah, so the
semester?
first cohort of students will be for about 4 weeks, about a month. And then about a month and a half, I'm still like playing with the numbers, but like about a month and a half. And then the second cohort will come in at a month and a half, because the vision is to, obviously have as many students to be able to be a part of the program, but also taking into account instructors and everything. So we're going to do 2 cohorts for each branch.
Okay, so 4 weeks in a way, and you're collaborating with the teachers at the local schools, right, to integrate. Because as usually the issue of going to schools is that the teachers are so overwhelmed already. They
Right.
already have their own curriculum. So how are
Yeah.
you able to integrate this into that system?
Yeah. So it's going to be more of an overarching idea, not so much of a educational content. Some of the skill sets that you'll need, um, also the mindset, how to think like a scientist, how to think like a coding engineer, all those concepts that you will need, the career paths that it'll take, like that's not going to be like a major content, but it'll be, sneaked into there, because the focus is to also give resources to these students as well, so that they'll continue in these paths. So I don't know if that answered your question there.
Yes, somewhat. I definitely have more questions, but I want to open this up, make sure I don't hog the entire discussion. Jessica, Anita, and friend, I can't pronounce your name there. Please jump in if you have any specific questions. I'm going to stay silent for the next 15 seconds so that I give room. Anybody else want to ask any other question?
I just wanted to follow. So this is Pete Volbrecht. Sorry.
Hey, Pete. Sorry, you're hiding there. In that,
Yeah, no worries. I was curious, still along the same lines with the certifications, like, is that going to be backed by one of these universities? Is this going to just say that Millennial Scnce certifies that this person has done
Like
this?
an
What does
empty
that look
paper.
like?
Yeah, I definitely don't want it to be an empty paper. So that's what we're working on as well. Having it backed by the university and the professors that will be working on the content. So yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I should definitely put that in there.
Yeah, that's a good question, Pete, on the certification. And it sounds to me you're still figuring out exactly what's going to go on to the certification. I think we're both fixated on certification because it's intriguing. You're attacking on the seniors, right, at the senior stage.
Right.
You're trying to equip them with additional exposure and resources so they're aware about either STEM careers, also about, here are what could happen to you in college, and here are resources that you can tap into, right? I think what is not clear to me is that what is it that you want the students to learn? Like, what are clear things that you can measure to say, yeah, the certification program has provided X to these students?
Right.
That to me is still not clear. Do you think you can expand a little bit on that? What is it you want the students to learn?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, as soon as the program ends, I want for the students to be able to be comfortable in a lab setting, in a setting with computers and coding, and being able to be confident in their skills and ability to take on these tasks, because they're going to be handed these situations where this is, and this is going to happen. So I know I talked about a little bit of the A, B, C, and D, but the focal point is going to be on what happens in a true lab internship, what happens in a true coding internship, and all these apprenticeships that you have in these STEM fields. Because if you're going in firsthand straight out of, even if college, that's, if that's, you decided exactly what I wanted to do. I've seen a television coming, now this is, without Millennial Scnce, I've seen a television commercial about coding, and I'm very excited about it. This is the field I'm going to go into. Okay, I got into college. This is great. Now I'm going to go for this internship. Great. I got this interview for this internship, and now they're asking me all these questions, and I don't really know yet. I just don't know. And I want students to be able to have that leverage to say, well, I do know about this. I did take this course on this. I have certification from here, and I was able to do A, B, C, and D. So that's kind of what we're going, and what we want students to come out of the program knowing.
Okay. Any other questions? We'll keep moving along.
Yeah, hi, this is Nika. Great presentation. And my question was, you mentioned you've done 10 events. I'm curious what you learned from those events and what surprised you, or how that's made you pivot your work in any way.
Great question. Yeah, I actually pivoted a lot. I'm gonna go to this slide. So this kind of helped me to understand what the real issue can be tackled, where the real issue can be tackled. Because having done the 10 events, I noticed that the children was definitely having the time of their lives. And I even had one student tell me that she wanted to be a geneticist, and that was the career path she's choosing. So really great feedback from parents and everything. But I noticed with older children, it was more critical. It was more critical for them. So even having had the program and helped them to understand whatever field we were talking about, but the take home, I feel like it hit a little harder for them, and then it became that whole what now. So that's why I wanted to have the program where it's set up so not only children can have their fun, and because essentially that's what it was. It became a thing where children will come to these events and they'll learn so much and they have all the fun in the world, and they'll go home and they'll go to their classrooms and they'll learn about other things, and they'll decide on their own if they want to go into that profession. But for older students, I felt like it was a little more critical for them. They wanted to know more. I feel like they desired to know more, but the program's only an hour. So I wanted something that was going to hit home a little harder and actually be tangible to help them succeed farther in life. So doing those events helped me to see where the need was stemming from and who could be helped more, if that makes sense. So that's where we started to turn our focus towards the older generations and seeing what we can do from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think to Nital's point, that I think you did this, you tinkered and you learned a couple of new data, right?
Right.
To say, actually, we should try and target this other population of older students, juniors, seniors, who are at a critical phase where they're about to transition, right, into college. And this is a critical phase where we feel we can create a program, right, of some sort that can help bridge this gap, whether it's helping them think about college. And that's something that I think you're going to learn more as you do this, because you have not done it yet, right? You have not done the certification yet. Yeah. And so you might learn something else completely new. And I think you can even do some very basic, if you can go to this classroom, you can get access and just ask the students, what would help you the most here? What is lacking in your training, right? Talking to teachers. Have you talked to the teachers and the students? Just, asking them, seniors and juniors, that is, and asking them, hey, what are you missing, and what do you want to see more of?
Yeah, that is so crazy you mentioned that, because we have a meeting next week, and that's exactly where the next the next phase is going to go. I'm actually looking for the here. So I mentioned here for the planning, currently working with focus groups to pan out what directional program will benefit the students the most. So definitely going into these schools that we're going to be working with and asking directly, but it's crazy that you mentioned, I thought, we thought to speak with, heads and the principals, teachers, the ones who have, direct contact with the students, but amazingly not the students themselves. But so I'm really glad you mentioned that, that
Because essentially, yeah, they're like the people you're going to interact with, right, directly. And so it will be interesting to hear what they have to say in terms of their needs, and so forth. And I think also, the tendency is to try to do a lot, right? And, they'll learn coding, they will learn this, they'll learn that. From experience, I'm thinking what happens usually, you start trimming down to one or two things that you want to extract, because then it's easier for the students to know what exactly they're trying to learn. And for you on your end to say, okay, my goal is to teach you coding because I think this is very important for the next phase. Or my goal is to teach you how do you navigate college, right? Because we have this problem with attrition rates, right? URM students are dropping out of college in higher numbers than other non-URM. So we're going to try and go to the source, like the early stages before they apply, to equip them with information or with knowledge that they can then use to successfully navigate college. Because that's something you can track and say, okay, of all the students who have gone through the program, how many graduated from college or something like that. You can, or finish the first year, let's say, right? But I think as you go through this process, just think clearly about what is this one thing or two things that you want to really tackle, so that it gets clear in your head as to what the next steps would be and what do you need to make it successful. Okay, because I think that's the challenge, I think, right now. And I think you're doing the groundwork. You're absolutely doing the groundwork to figure out what that is, right? The one or two things that you want to target more of. Any other questions before I ask some other ones?
I just wanted to build off of that, if I can, because I think it's awesome that you have this corporate sponsorship, some funding, and I think that's incredible. I think if you want to, and I don't know where it's coming from, but it's important to think about what you can show them to show them that what you're doing is successful and being successful. So I'm curious what some of your measurables are. What are you giving them surveys? What kind of things are you doing to assess whether what you're doing is working or not? Because I think that will be important as you try to grow the program, especially as you try to bring in more sponsorships to be able to show them that it's an effective program.
Right. So that is a great question. So currently, having done the program, we're able to assess, and essentially what we put out for members and the sponsors who able to donate money is the the overarching idea of being able to help students get from A to B, and helping them navigate how STEM plays, in different fields and different professions. So going forward, and advancing into where we have these the certification programs, and where we're able to keep in contact with these students, because essentially these events that we have different students coming. I probably didn't make that clear enough. Sorry if I didn't, but we have different students coming, from all over that come to these programs, and still they'll come to the next program, or maybe it's raining, they won't come to the next. So then we lose contact. So being able to assess that data was very difficult for us. So moving forward, this is how we're another lesson that we've learned to, pivot in this direction, to be able to track and measure the performance of the students that we, come into contact with, and that we are actually essentially giving the service to. So yeah, definitely something we're doing for the future.
So Pete, I would like you, so Pete is one of our SAI fellows, and he's doing a lot of great work. In fact, this question about analyzing and figuring out whether what you're doing is working.
Yeah,
right?
it's essential.
Yeah.
It's a really hard problem. So Pete, could you share some insights on there? Because I think Cautney is still, I can hear it, you're still processing through this, right?
Correct.
Your pre and post.
Yes, I am taking in everything. Like, everything that is saying, I am like filtrating into my mind. So I'm open for all the criticism and
Sure. Well, it's certainly not criticism, but I think it's something that I've been working through myself, is figuring out how do I prove that what I'm doing is useful. So I'm involved in some science outreach as well. I'm building something called the Brain Explorers program. We go out into classrooms and talk about neuroscience, but really our major goal is improving attitudes towards science in underrepresented minority groups and low SES environments. And so we use a survey that just assesses attitudes towards science and how is that changing with our program. We do some measure of content knowledge. And if you're doing this certification program, I'm assuming that you're going to have some sort of, I don't know if it's an exam or what, but some sort of assessment of content knowledge improvements. And it sounds like you're still kind of trying to decide what that content will be, but I would encourage you to try and not make it too broad. As Fanuel was suggesting, it's a little tough. And I would say over the last 3 or 4 years, we've gone from, we're going to do all the neuroscience to like, we're going to teach students how a signal gets from their fingertip to their brain and they respond to it. Right. Like, and that's not a bad thing. That's like, it's turned into what's actually manageable and what are we actually going to be able to get across in the 1 hour that we have with them or whatever. We're starting to build a longitudinal program as well. But I think looking for surveys that already exist would be a really valuable thing in terms of just assessing attitudes towards science. If you're looking for really concrete content changes, doing some sort of an exam, but even building your own survey, if you have different goals in mind, having some way of assessing if you're meeting those goals is going to be really important.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that, Peter.
Yeah, I think this is a thing we all struggle with, thinking about, is what you're doing working? What can I measure, right? And the differentiating, what is an output? Because you can say, I could have asked you how many students showed up at your event. You had 10 events. How many students showed up at the event? You can track all these things. But that's an output, an outcome is something else entirely. It's what did you change? Pete mentioned about the attitude, right? Survey you're doing, right? Did you change an attitude? Could you measure that in 1 hour, 2 hours? I don't know.
So
we saw it.
Yeah, I am, because that is something that is actually tangible, that it can be, represented to show, things, that concrete evidence that, that the organization is doing. Because I have had students that come up to me and I have, DMs from like parents and saying, oh, my child, so having been able to use that, if, I did, would have been a great reinforcer for more sponsorships and just
and also
support from outside.
Yeah, and also thinking, do keep in mind, like, how can this be replicated somewhere else?
Right.
Okay. Like if in terms of, if someone else wanted to do this in Boston or in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
What is the minimal quanta unit that you can write in a page, right? To say, okay, here is the instruction manual. I think Pete knows where I'm going with this. In the sense that, could you then imagine someone else, right, who wants to do this? What are things that you should be tracking, that they can be doing? And when you think of it that way, it forces you to think clearly about what it is that you're doing that can be replicated somewhere else. So I would encourage you to just keep that in mind. It helps you clarify.
Like expansion, and being able to have it.
And again, baby steps. Like, I think you're gonna start slowly and then see what works, get some data. Very important to think about structures that are in place and then grow from there. And so do you envision this to be what, a national program, like the certification at this critical juncture? Because this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this jump from high school to college, right, as a really important gap. And you are trying to do something. I don't know quite yet what that is. I think we're going to keep talking. But do you envision trying to make this around the country, like to replicate it? What's your vision broadly again? Could you repeat it?
Yeah. Well, the vision for long term, I guess, 10 plus years over, is definitely to have it replicated. A lot of the content that we want to make, we're gonna put it online to have in a way that not a lot is needed to be able to, host these programs for students.
Mm-hmm.
So, we can have other people that come in or just be able to get a hold. Well, we have the software and everything, get a hold of us, and then we send them right over. And the first cohort and the second cohort, and then working from that area, it's definitely something I see long term, because to make all of that tangible, that comes with, software and things of that nature. But right now, everything is, face-to-face interactions. But as, technology advances and things of that nature, and we have the finances to be able to make, great, expenses like that, then that's definitely something we want to do.
Okay. Any other questions from the crew?
I just had a comment as well. Have you tried actually getting the college students involved at all? Whether that's, talking to freshmen and sophomores, saying, what would be a good thing for you to have learned or something like that in high school? What would have been something that would have been useful for you? Now knowing what you've already expected over these past 2 years of you, what's something that you could have learned in high school, or a class that you could have taken, or a certification you could have gotten that would have helped you farther along than where you are right now or something. Or have you even considered following up with any of the students that have been in your classes that are now in college? Was that something that helped them? Are there things that they can just kind of do, like some type of input that they can say, like, hey, I understand where you were going with this, but I think if you went more into this direction, this would help more. Just other feedback that you could get from college students themselves.
Yeah. So when initially curating the content for the programs that for this past summer, we definitely spoke with college students to get the input for which events to do, which programs to do, what professions that they were interested in, what helped and what element of it would be, would have been helpful in their careers. It's not old enough yet where we have college students that
right.
do the programs, but that's definitely, a really great thing to think about, especially with, what the plans for 2020, and having those students as they graduate, making sure that there's concrete ways to stay in touch with the students and being able to have the alum give feedback on the program. So yeah, definitely a really great suggestion. I'm like writing all this great stuff down.
And don't worry, this is just the first conversation, okay?
Yeah, I mean, just from our experience in general, I'm part of more of the stories and science side, so we're always recruiting and stuff. And from my experience, I feel like the first year or two of college students are better targets than the last 2 years. The last 2 years, they're pretty busy. They're focused on trying to get jobs or whatever the case, or they're just super focused on their major. Those first 2 years, you can kind of like grab onto them. They're super excited about what they're doing. And I've found a lot of luck with those first 2 years.
Great.
It's a good target as well. They're available.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's 1:47 now. We're getting kind of close to to the conclusion of the chat here, I am definitely thinking more about what is it that could, in terms of what you're trying to design, right? You are very in the early stages, I feel, and it's really exciting time because you're trying to figure out what the next steps will be and what you want to focus on. As Jessica mentioned, it's important to talk to people, right? Even the college student, asking them, hey, what will work for you? And talking to the teachers too. And you can get access to the students, the high schoolers, asking them like what could, what could help. From my own personal experience, I think this gap, now that as I'm thinking about it now more and more and more, thanks to your talk, thinking more about helping students navigate that space, that gap, right? From high school to college is such a big gap. Yeah. And I think minority students are usually at a disadvantage, right? Yeah. So it'll be interesting, especially those who are thinking about doing STEM in college, right? And that's an opportunity right there. And I think you probably need to look at it and study it, figure out if it's something that you'll be interested to try to tackle a little bit. I think your certification program tries to get at that, but I think it still needs to more concrete steps. Like, we are going to help you apply to college, like something like that, or we're going to help you do this, right? And at the end of it, you will know what to do. Yeah. Something very, very clear. And again, you have to decide what that is for you.
There's definitely along the lines of everything I want to go into. So that's what I really want the next focus groups to do, because I didn't want to stress too much on the A, B, C, and D, because I really wanted to focus on what the data shows, and what that'll bring for the next steps, because I could love, coding and genetics, and then, the majority is saying, no, we want to know how to act in an internship, and I wish I would have had this and that and that. So I'm also going to be working with the Stony Brook's minority in STEM group. It's a just a group that, people from, different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, all who have the same majors in STEM, and just having, a talk with them and seeing, that bridge, what lacked them the most, which is a lot of what you all suggested, which is definitely what I'm going to pin on these questions exactly, so that I'll be able to get some concrete ways of building this structural program, as far as like their certification goes, because I feel it can, anything that can go on the resume that can help someone, especially in STEM, because there's so much people going into these fields now, and when you're at a disadvantage as far as, not being able to have like the background of having programs, because I know when I'll say, for example, for myself, from my own experience, my first internship going in, I didn't know what like a lab, like the lab sinks and how they like the way they had it. This is like a high level, lab. I think it was the Cold Spring Harbor lab. So they were doing cancer research. So this is straight from like high school, going into this I'm, having this internship, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who, what, when, where, and he asked me about certain things, and I just didn't know anything. And I just want students, I'm banking off of my experience, but I also want to hear others' experience and how I can pan that to make it more feasible for everybody, and it helps, the most people, because it's not only my experience, but experience of the majority, and being able to have all those experience tied up to be able to give an institutional backed certification program to help minorities get through and have a leverage going into STEM professions by getting those internships and apprenticeships, by having that experience with Millennial Scnce. So.
And that's sort of just an idea here Pete just mentioned. So he wrote, I'm imagining a mentorship program, perhaps one that links current URM freshmen and sophomores in college with juniors and seniors in high school. I feel like some programs like this do exist. And this is kind of, you are the really opportune moment to be able to do this completely. And even, as Pete mentioned, perhaps use some of the URM group at the Stony Brook as well, right? So I think what you probably will need to do is to pose these questions, right, to students. Say, hey, would a mentorship structure, if you were to be mentored by another URM in college, would that be helpful to you? And on the college side, you can ask them, hey, would you like to mentor a student over in high school? Would you have wished you had someone like this? You know, I sure would have.
Yeah, I definitely thought along the lines of a mentorship, but the only thing with the mentorship,
right,
even though it first of all, I completely stand by mentorships. They, help aid you in ways unimaginable, but I wanted something a little more tangible that can be seen on paper, that shows and adds worth to a student as an asset to a company. And as a minority, not having any other experience, that could be a big step, and it'll help put you in one of the finalists that could be, potentially picked to have that.
But remember though, like keep in mind that typically most of these kids are applying to go to college afterwards, right? It's college is what's in their minds. Are you saying that you want them to be applying to internships, like to working companies after they graduate? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I know internships probably, some students usually go into internships like their junior year, or senior year, but I'm talking like more along the lines of like summer, and like fall when things are not as like.
Okay, so then you just have to decide what you want to focus on, because that experience is a different approach, right? You may have to think, okay, what do I need to be training these kids so they can apply to these summer internships that are accepting high school? Because you're right, they do exist. They absolutely do exist. We have one at Harvard. Okay. Yeah. But then that's a kind of a different approach to then thinking about college. You can link them to say these internships help you to apply to college, to make you more competitive. But again, you kind of have to bring the elements together in a way that makes sense in a program that, as you said, you want them to have a certificate. Cool. But yeah, we'll love to continue this. This is part one. I feel like this is part one. Okay. I want to really thank everyone for chiming in, and thank you, Cautney, for taking the time to chat with us.
Yes, thank you everyone for personal experiences and adding to the conversation. It definitely helps so much.
Yeah, I hope we've given you some ideas just to go back and thinking about what you want to build. And it's an exciting time. I can tell you that I'm excited for you as you continue to think.
And thank you for the outlet, to being able to have, just a really relaxed environment to be able to talk about these things and these issues, and to make more gravitational pull to this.
Yeah, and that's SAI. The spirit of SAI is exactly that point you just brought up at the end there. And we'll continue to have these discussions with many other organizations. And our next chat will be a conversation with one of my colleagues who just published a paper actually of a program that he's doing down in Bolivia, I believe. So that paper is published, and we're going to dive into that detail and talking about numbers and tracking things. He has gone to the extreme lengths of tracking every single thing you can think about, and he's published that paper in Nature because of that. We'll get into that. So Cautney, make sure you can join us for that, because Mo is thinking about this in a very, very interesting level. And as you are thinking about this and beginning to think about these things, he'll give you some really good tips, I think, on that note. So on that note, I'd like to end the discussion. Thank you all for joining us. Cautney, again, thank you for joining, and we'll continue this discussion, okay? Don't worry. All right. Bye, everyone.